The planet had no official name anymore. Old star maps once called it Zereth 9. But after the war, nobody wanted to remember it. From space, the world looked dead, covered in black storms and broken cities. Half the planet burned in darkness while giant ruined ships floated above the clouds like forgotten ghosts. Even veteran soldiers feared this place. For 10 years. Strange signals had come from beneath the surface. Ships sent to investigate disappeared without answers. Entire alien fleets avoided the system completely. Rumors spread across the galaxy about something sleeping under the planet. Something powerful, something alive. Captain Elias Kane stood inside a human dropship as it flew through the dark sky toward the ruins below. The red warning lights inside the ship flashed across his tired face. Around him, 12 human soldiers checked their weapons in silence. Nobody joked, nobody smiled. Everyone knew this mission felt wrong. A cold robotic voice echoed through the ship. Destination reached in 60 seconds. One nervous soldier looked toward Elias. "Captain, you really think the stories are true?" Elias calmly loaded energy rounds into his rifle. "Stories don't destroy military fleets," he said. The ship shook violently as thunder exploded outside, below them. A massive metal structure appeared through the storm clouds. The underground facility. It stretched across miles of ruined land like a giant scar cut into the planet itself. Broken towers leaned sideways, old alien symbols covered the walls. Most of the structure looked abandoned, but one thing immediately caught Elias' attention. The lights were still on after 10 years. The facility still had power. The dropship landed hard near the main entrance. Dust and ash filled the air outside. The soldiers slowly stepped onto the dead planet with weapons raised. The wind sounded strange here, almost like distant screaming. "Stay close," Elias ordered. The giant metal doors leading underground were already open. That made everyone even more nervous. One soldier whispered quietly. Something opened them. Inside, the facility felt cold and silent. Long hallways stretched into darkness beneath flickering red lights. Broken glass covered the floor. Old blood stains marked the walls. But there were no bodies, no signs of battle, only silence. As the team moved deeper underground, strange warning messages appeared on glowing screens beside the hallways. Most were written in alien language. But human translators inside their helmets slowly decoded the text. One message appeared clearly. "Warning, Subject 0 containment active." Another message flashed seconds later. "Do not let the subject escape." A soldier laughed nervously. "Yeah. I officially hate this place." Then the lights suddenly shut off. Darkness swallowed the hallway instantly. Several soldiers raised their rifles in panic. "Motion detected," one helmet scanner warned. Something moved in the darkness ahead, fast, very fast. The lights flickered back on for 1 second. A dark shape rushed across the hallway wall, then vanished again. One soldier fired by accident. The loud gunshot echoed endlessly underground. Everyone froze, listening carefully. Then they heard it, a child crying, very soft, very weak. The sound came from somewhere deeper inside the facility. The soldiers stared at each other in confusion. A kid? Someone whispered. Elias slowly lowered his weapon. "That's impossible," the crying continued through the darkness. Not angry, not dangerous, just scared. Elias followed the sound while the others stayed close behind him. The deeper they walked, the stranger the facility became. Huge metal doors stood bent open, like something powerful had forced its way through them long ago. Entire rooms looked crushed from the inside. Deep claw marks covered the walls, and everywhere they looked, they found the same warning symbol. A black hand surrounded by red stars. Finally, the team reached a giant circular chamber. The room was massive, almost the size of a city block. In the center stood a single glass containment pod, connected to hundreds of cables and machines. Blue liquid slowly moved inside the chamber, and floating inside it was a little girl. The soldiers froze completely. She looked no older than 8 years old. Her pale silver hair floated around her face inside the liquid. Dark marks covered parts of her skin like strange alien scars. Thin metal wires connected her arms to the machines around her, but the most shocking thing was her face. She looked terrified, not like a monster, not like a weapon. Just a frightened child trapped alone in the dark. Suddenly, every screen inside the chamber activated at once. Red warning symbols flashed everywhere. Planetary threat detected. Subject 0 active. Do not open containment. One soldier stepped backward immediately. Oh God. Another soldier raised his rifle toward the chamber. That thing destroyed fleets, he whispered. She's the weapon. The crying girl slowly opened her eyes for the first time. Bright glowing blue eyes locked directly onto Elias. Not the soldiers, not the weapons, only him. The room suddenly became very quiet. The girl slowly lifted one small hand against the glass. Elias could see fear in her eyes, real fear. Like she expected them to hurt her. One soldier spoke urgently. Captain. Command ordered immediate termination if we found Subject 0, but Elias did not move. Something about the child felt wrong, not dangerous wrong, sad wrong. Like she had been alone for a very long time. The little girl stared at him silently. Then tears slowly rolled down her face inside the chamber. Elias stepped closer. Warning alarms immediately screamed across the entire facility. Captain. A soldier shouted, but Elias ignored them. He reached the control panel beside the chamber. One final warning appeared on the screen. If containment opens, humanity will fall. The soldiers aimed their rifles nervously. Sweat rolled down their faces. The crying child never looked away from Elias for even 1 second. Then slowly, Elias pressed the release button. The glass chamber opened with a loud hiss. Blue liquid poured across the floor. The small alien girl collapsed weakly into Elias' arms. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then every alarm in the facility activated at once. Red lights flashed violently across the chamber. And the little girl looked up at Elias with frightened glowing eyes. Before whispering one single word, Dad. Red emergency lights flashed across the underground chamber. Warning sirens screamed through every hallway of the facility. The sound was so loud it shook dust from the ceiling above. Captain Elias Kane stood frozen beside the open containment chamber, while the small alien girl weakly held onto his arm. Water from the broken pod spread across the cold metal floor around them. Behind Elias, the human soldiers aimed their rifles with shaking hands. Nobody knew what to do. Nobody even understood what they were looking at anymore. The tiny girl slowly looked around the chamber with frightened glowing eyes. She seemed confused by the lights, the alarms, and the armed soldiers surrounding her. Then suddenly every screen inside the room changed at once. A dark alien symbol appeared across the monitors moments later. An old recording started playing automatically. The image showed terrified alien scientists running through this same chamber years earlier. Some screamed while others desperately tried locking giant metal doors. Then a voice echoed through the speakers in broken human language. Subject 0 has awakened. Evacuation impossible. If the child escapes, civilization collapse probability exceeds 98%. Gunfire sounded in the old recording. The scientists were shooting at something off-screen. Then the video suddenly ended in static. Silence filled the chamber for one uncomfortable moment. One human soldier slowly stepped backward. We need to kill it now, he whispered. The little girl immediately flinched after hearing those words. She moved closer behind Elias like a scared child hiding from strangers. Elias noticed her hands shaking badly. This was not how a monster acted. This was how a terrified child acted. Another soldier spoke nervously into his communicator. Command. This is Echo Team. We found Subject 0. Static answered first. Then finally a cold voice came through the radio. Confirm visual. The soldier swallowed hard. She looks like a child, the voice answered instantly. Subject 0 is not a child. Terminate immediately. Several soldiers raised their rifles higher. But Elias suddenly stepped in front of the girl. No, he said firmly. The chamber became quiet again. One soldier stared at him in disbelief. Captain, did you not hear command? Elias looked back at the frightened girl hiding behind him. She's scared, he answered. And she hasn't attacked anyone. The little alien slowly looked up at him after hearing those words. For the first time since leaving the chamber, the fear in her eyes softened slightly. Then the facility suddenly shook violently. The lights flickered again. A deep explosion echoed somewhere far above them. Everyone grabbed onto nearby railings to stay balanced. What was that? Someone shouted. Before anyone answered, another warning message appeared across every screen. Unauthorized ships entering orbit. Multiple hostile fleets detected. The soldiers looked at each other in shock. How did they find this place so fast? Then a second message appeared. The child must be returned. The room instantly became colder. One soldier whispered carefully, "They came for her." Elias felt the little girl grab the back of his jacket tighter. She looked terrified again. Suddenly all power inside the chamber shut off completely. Darkness swallowed the room. Only the girl's glowing blue eyes remained visible. Then something strange happened. Every soldier's weapon suddenly stopped working. Their rifles powered down at the exact same moment. Helmet systems failed. Flashlights died instantly. One panicked soldier hit his weapon repeatedly. "It's dead." Another shouted, "Mine too." The girl looked around nervously, as if she did not understand what was happening. Then the power slowly returned. Lights flickered back on across the chamber. And every weapon suddenly worked again. The soldiers stared at the child with growing fear. "She did that," one whispered. "No." Another muttered, "She barely moved." Elias looked carefully at the girl beside him. She honestly seemed confused by the whole thing. Like her abilities activated without her control. Then one of the facility scanners suddenly activated near the containment chamber. A robotic voice echoed through the room. "DNA match detected." The soldiers frowned in confusion. The machine scanned Elias again, then displayed shocking words across the screen. "Genetic compatibility. Parental match possible." Everyone stared at the screen silently. One soldier laughed nervously. "That has to be broken." But Elias felt his stomach tighten. The little girl slowly looked up at him again. Not with fear this time, with hope, then quietly. Almost too softly to hear, she spoke again. "Dad." Before Elias could answer, the entire facility suddenly shook harder than before. Dust and metal crashed from the ceiling. Emergency alarms screamed louder across the station. A new warning appeared on the giant central monitor. "Hostile boarding detected. Outer defenses destroyed." The soldiers immediately turned toward the exits. "They're inside the facility already." Then distant gunfire echoed through the underground halls. Human screams followed seconds later. Something was killing the security teams above them, fast, very fast. One terrified soldier backed away from the child completely. "They're willing to invade an entire dead planet just for her. That means the stories are true." Elias looked toward the hallway leading deeper underground. Then back toward the frightened alien girl holding his arm. Every instinct told him this mission had become far bigger than anyone imagined. The child was not simply dangerous, she was important. Important enough for entire fleets to start a war over her. Then suddenly all the chamber lights turned blood red. A final emergency message echoed across the facility. "Containment failure confirmed. Subject retrieval units activated." Heavy metal footsteps suddenly echoed from the dark hallway outside the chamber. Slow, massive, getting closer every second. And the little alien girl whispered only one terrified word. "They found me." The heavy footsteps grew louder inside the dark hallway. Each step shook the metal floor beneath the soldiers' boots. Nobody moved, nobody even breathed properly. Captain Elias Kane slowly raised his rifle toward the entrance of the chamber while the small alien girl hid behind him silently. Red emergency lights flashed across the walls like blood-colored lightning. Then something massive appeared in the doorway. A giant armored machine, nearly 10 feet tall, stepped into the chamber. Its black metal body was covered in deep battle scars. One glowing red eye scanned the room slowly. Strange alien symbols burned across its armor plates, and attached to one giant arm was a weapon bigger than a human soldier. The machine did not look alive, but it did not look fully robotic either. It moved too smoothly, too naturally. One nervous soldier whispered, "What is that thing?" The alien girl behind Elias suddenly grabbed his arm tightly, trembling in fear. Her glowing blue eyes widened the moment she saw the machine. Then she quietly whispered, "Hunter." The machine immediately locked onto her position. A cold mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. "Subject 0 located. Return to containment." The little girl shook her head quickly. "No." The machine took another heavy step forward. "Resistance is unnecessary." One human soldier panicked and opened fire first. Bright energy rounds slammed directly into the machine's chest. But the bullets did almost nothing. The armored giant kept walking forward without slowing down. Then suddenly it fired back. A single blast exploded across the chamber. The soldier who fired disappeared instantly in a wave of fire and smoke. The remaining humans screamed and scattered for cover. "Take it down!" Elias shouted. Gunfire filled the chamber from every direction. Energy rounds sparked against the hunter's armor like rain against stone. Still the machine kept moving toward the child, focused only on her. The alien girl covered her ears in fear as explosions echoed around her. She looked more terrified than dangerous. The hunter raised its giant weapon directly toward her. "Subject must return," it repeated coldly. Elias jumped between them without hesitation. "You want her?" he shouted. "Then you go through me first, for the first time." The machine paused. Its glowing red eye scanned Elias carefully. Then the robotic voice changed slightly. "Human interference detected. Permission to terminate granted." The weapon charged with deadly blue energy. But before the hunter could fire, the little girl suddenly screamed. Not loudly, not angrily, just pure fear. And instantly the entire changed. Everything became silent, completely silent. The flashing alarms froze. Falling dust stopped in midair. Even the soldiers themselves stopped moving for one impossible second. Time itself seemed frozen. Only Elias and the little alien girl could still move. Elias stared around the motionless chamber in shock. "What?" The child looked horrified too, like she never meant for this to happen. Then cracks suddenly spread across the hunter's armor, tiny at first, then larger and larger. The giant machine slowly turned toward the girl one final time. Before its entire body collapsed into pieces across the floor, time suddenly returned normally. The alarms screamed again, dust hit the ground, and confused soldiers looked around in panic. What just happened? One shouted. The hunter was gone. Only broken metal remained where it once stood. Nobody understood what they had just seen. The little alien girl stared at the destroyed machine with tears running down her face. Then she backed away from everyone slowly. Fear filled her glowing eyes. "No," she whispered weakly. "I hurt." She looked at her own shaking hands like she was terrified of them. Elias carefully approached her. "It's okay," he said softly. But the soldiers behind him looked terrified now. "She destroyed it without touching it," one whispered. Another soldier slowly raised his rifle toward her again. "She's too dangerous." The girl immediately noticed the weapon and froze in fear. Then suddenly every light inside the chamber exploded at once. Glass shattered everywhere. Machines burst into flames. The soldiers stumbled backward in panic. Elias quickly grabbed the frightened child before things became worse. "Stop!" he shouted at the others. "Lower your weapons." For a tense moment nobody moved, then slowly, the soldiers obeyed. The child's powers calmed almost instantly afterward. The remaining emergency lights flickered weakly above them. Elias looked down at the shaken girl in his arms. She was crying silently now, not like a monster, like a child terrified of herself. Then one damaged computer near the chamber suddenly activated again. An old video file automatically appeared on the screen. The image showed the same little girl years earlier, only younger. She was strapped to a metal chair while alien scientists surrounded her. The child screamed in pain as strange machines connected wires into her body. One scientist spoke coldly into the recording. Subject 0 continues resisting emotional suppression. Empathy levels remain dangerously high, another scientist answered. Then remove it. The soldiers watched silently as the video continued. The young girl cried desperately for help while the experiments continued around her. One scientist finally noticed the recording device and shut it off. The screen went black. Silence filled the chamber once more. Even the soldiers lowering their rifles now looked uncomfortable, one quietly muttered. They tortured her. Elias looked at the frightened child beside him and finally understood the truth. The galaxy's most feared weapon was never born evil. She was created, broken, used, then abandoned. The little girl slowly looked up at Elias again. Her glowing eyes filled with fear and sadness. Then she asked the smallest question imaginable. I bad? Elias immediately shook his head. No, he said firmly. You are not a monster, for the first time since they met. The child looked slightly less afraid, but before another word could be spoken, every monitor inside the chamber suddenly turned on again. A giant alien warship appeared on the screens floating above the planet. Then a deep voice echoed through the facility. Attention! Humans, you have stolen property of the Varkal Empire. Return Subject 0 immediately. The voice paused for one chilling moment, or Earth will burn. The giant alien warship filled every screen inside the ruined facility. Its dark metal surface covered the sky above Zereth 9 like a moving shadow. Smaller warships surrounded it from every direction, hundreds of them. Captain Elias Kane stared at the screen silently while emergency alarms echoed across the underground chamber. Beside him, the small alien girl held tightly onto his sleeve. Her glowing blue eyes stayed locked on the image of the massive ship above them. She looked terrified, like she already knew what those ships could do. One surviving human soldier stepped closer to Elias carefully. Captain, Earth Command just sent new orders. Elias already knew what those orders would be. Still, he asked anyway. What did they say? The soldier hesitated nervously before answering. Hand over the child immediately. No negotiations. The room became silent again. The little girl lowered her head slowly after hearing those words. Even she understood now. Nobody wanted her, nobody except Elias. A second message suddenly arrived through the communication system. This time directly from Earth Military Command. A woman's cold voice filled the chamber. Captain Kane, this is Admiral Reyes. You are ordered to surrender Subject 0 to the Varkal Empire. Humanity cannot survive another galactic war. Elias looked toward the frightened child beside him, then answered calmly, She's just a kid. The Admiral's voice immediately hardened. She is responsible for the destruction of 12 worlds. She is not a child. She is a weapon. The little girl slowly stepped backward after hearing those words. Pain appeared across her face, like she had heard that sentence her entire life. Weapon, monster, danger, never child, never person. Elias clenched his fists tightly. She saved our lives, he argued. She protected us from that machine, Admiral Reyes answered instantly. And next time she may destroy your entire fleet. Stand down. Captain, that is a direct order, the communication ended. The soldiers inside the chamber looked uncomfortable. Nobody wanted to say anything anymore. Because deep down, they all feared the same thing. What if command was right? Then suddenly the little girl quietly spoke. "I can go." Everyone turned toward her in surprise. Her voice sounded small and weak. "If I leave." "Humans safe." Elias immediately shook his head. "No." The girl looked confused. "But they want me gone. They scared." Elias crouched down beside her so their eyes matched. "You are not going back to those people," he said firmly. For a moment, the child simply stared at him silently, like she could not believe someone was finally choosing her instead of fearing her. Then distant explosions suddenly echoed through the underground halls again. Closer this time, the Varkal soldiers were entering the lower facility. One human soldier quickly checked his scanner. Multiple hostile life forms approaching fast. "We need to move now." Elias stood immediately. "We're leaving." A shocked soldier looked at him. "Leaving?" "Captain, that means disobeying direct military orders." Elias grabbed his rifle calmly. "Then I guess I'm disobeying them." For 1/10 second nobody moved. Then surprisingly, two soldiers stepped beside him. One shrugged nervously. "Honestly, command stopped making sense a long time ago." Another nodded. "I'm not handing a child to monsters." The little alien girl stared at them with wide eyes, almost like she had never seen people protect her before. The group quickly moved through the dark underground hallways, while distant gunfire echoed behind them. Smoke filled parts of the facility now. Broken pipes released steam across the corridors. The entire structure felt like it was dying around them as they ran. The little girl stayed close beside Elias the entire time, never letting go of his jacket. At one point they passed an old laboratory room with shattered glass walls. Inside were dozens of smaller containment chambers. All empty. The girl suddenly froze after seeing them. Fear instantly returned to her face. Elias noticed immediately. "What is it?" he asked softly. She looked toward the empty chambers silently before answering. "Other children." The soldiers slowed down in shock. "Other children?" One repeated. The girl nodded weakly. "They made many. Most died." Nobody spoke after that. The hallway suddenly felt much colder. Elias finally understood something horrifying. Subject Zero was never the only experiment. She was simply the only one who survived. Then the facility lights flickered violently again. A loud mechanical voice echoed across every hallway. "Security breach confirmed. Subject retrieval teams deployed." Heavy footsteps immediately echoed somewhere behind them. More hunters, and this time, probably many of them. The soldiers began running faster. Finally they reached an old transport hangar near the surface. A damaged human shuttle still waited there, surrounded by debris. One soldier quickly checked the controls. "It still works," he said in surprise. "Barely," another muttered as the team prepared the shuttle. The little alien girl quietly looked around the hangar, her glowing eyes filled with nervous curiosity. Then she noticed something strange painted on the side of the shuttle. A small picture of Earth beside a human family, two parents holding a child's hand. The alien girl stared at the image silently for several seconds, then looked toward Elias. "What is that?" she asked softly. Elias followed her gaze. "That?" he answered. "That's family." The child looked back at the drawing again. Very slowly, very carefully, she moved closer beside Elias, then gently held his hand for the first time. Not because she was scared, but because she wanted to, then quietly, almost like she feared the words might disappear, she asked, "Can humans have family with monsters too?" Before Elias could answer, giant explosions suddenly ripped through the hangar doors behind them. Metal twisted apart violently, and three massive hunters stepped through the smoke. Their glowing red eyes locked directly onto the little girl. One machine spoke instantly. "Subject Zero retrieval authorized. Deadly force approved." The shattered hangar trembled as the three hunters stepped through the smoke. Their glowing red eyes scanned the room like predators searching for prey. Behind Captain Elias Kane, The small alien girl froze completely. Her fingers tightened around his hand. The damaged human shuttle behind them was still powering up slowly. Not fast enough. One human soldier checked the controls in panic. "Engines need 2 more minutes." He shouted, "We don't have 2 minutes," another answered nervously. The hunters raised their weapons at the same time. Blue energy glowed across the barrels. Then the nearest machine spoke with its cold mechanical voice. "Return Subject 0. Resistance will be eliminated." Elias immediately stepped in front of the child again. "She's not going with you," he said firmly. The hunter paused for 1 second, almost like it was analyzing his words. Then it answered. "Human emotional attachment detected. Conclusion: weakness." The machines opened fire. Bright energy blasts exploded across the hangar walls. Metal melted instantly around the soldiers. Everyone scattered for cover while alarms screamed overhead. Elias grabbed the little girl and pulled her behind a destroyed cargo container. The child covered her ears as explosions shook the floor around them. She looked terrified again, not of the hunters, but of herself. Because every time she became emotional, terrible things happened. One soldier fired rockets toward the machines. The explosion threw one hunter backward. But the other 2 kept advancing through the fire like unstoppable monsters. "They won't stop." The soldier shouted. The hunters returned fire immediately. The rocket soldier disappeared in a blast of blue energy. Silence followed for 1 painful second. Another human life gone. The little alien girl stared at the burning floor with wide, frightened eyes, then quietly whispered, "They always come back." Elias looked toward her carefully. "Who?" "The hunters," she answered weakly. "They never stop chasing." Then suddenly the nearest hunter smashed through the cargo container beside them. Metal flew across the room. Its giant hand grabbed Elias by the throat and lifted him into the air easily. The machine's glowing eye focused directly on him. "Human interference ending," it said coldly. The little girl screamed, "Nitrogen monoxide." Instantly every light inside the hangar exploded. A powerful shockwave burst outward from the child. The hunters were thrown violently across the room like broken toys. Walls cracked, windows shattered. Even the human shuttle shook dangerously from the force. Elias crashed hard onto the floor, coughing for air. The child stood in the center of the destruction, trembling badly. Blue energy flowed around her body uncontrollably. The floor beneath her feet slowly cracked apart. She looked terrified, not powerful, not evil, terrified. "I don't want hurt people," she cried. The energy around her became even stronger. Machines inside the hangar suddenly started floating into the air around her. The remaining soldiers backed away in fear. "She's losing control." One shouted. The hunters slowly stood again through the smoke. "Damaged but still active. Threat level increased," one announced. "Planetary destruction risk rising." Then all 3 hunters aimed directly at the child together. Preparing to kill her permanently, Elias forced himself back onto his feet despite the pain. Then walked directly toward the unstable energy surrounding the girl. "Captain!" A soldier shouted, but Elias ignored them. The air itself felt heavy near her now, like invisible pressure crushing everything nearby. Still he kept walking forward. The child looked at him with tears running down her face. "Please go away," she cried. "I don't want to hurt you too." Elias slowly reached her, then placed both hands gently on her shoulders. "It's okay," he said calmly. "You are not alone anymore." The girl stared at him silently while the violent energy continued surrounding them. Then Elias said something nobody had ever told her before. "You don't have to be a weapon." For a moment the entire hangar became quiet again. The floating metal slowly dropped back onto the floor. The shaking stopped. The child's powers calmed almost instantly. Then one hunter suddenly scanned Elias again. Its red eye flickered strangely. "Anomaly detected," it announced. "Human DNA compatibility confirmed." The soldiers looked confused, but the machine continued speaking. Subject 0 genetic template derived from human Project Eden. Elias froze. What? The hunters ignored him. Human DNA integration successful. Subject 0 designated bridge between species. The little girl looked confused too. She slowly looked up at Elias. Human? She whispered. Before anyone could understand the full meaning, the shuttle pilot suddenly shouted from the cockpit. Engines online. We need to leave now. Outside the hangar, massive explosions lit the sky above Zereth 9. The Varkal fleet had started bombing the planet's surface. Huge pieces of burning metal crashed down from the clouds. The entire facility was collapsing. The surviving soldiers quickly rushed toward the shuttle. Elias grabbed the little girl's hand and pulled her with him. The hunters immediately moved to stop them. But the child suddenly turned back toward the machines one final time. Not angry, not hateful, just sad, then softly whispered one word. Sleep. All three hunters instantly shut down at the exact same moment. Their giant bodies collapsed lifelessly onto the floor. Everyone stared at her in shocked silence. The little girl herself looked surprised too, like she never knew she could do that. Then alarms screamed one final warning across the hangar. Core meltdown imminent. Planetary detonation in 6 minutes. The soldiers sprinted into the shuttle as the world around them began collapsing apart. Elias strapped the child safely into a seat beside him while the engines roared to life. The girl looked out the shuttle window toward the burning planet below. Then quietly asked the question nobody expected, if humans made me. Her glowing eyes slowly turned toward Elias. Why humans scared of me too? The shuttle shook violently as it broke through the burning atmosphere of Zereth 9. Outside the small window, the planet looked like a dying star. Entire continents were breaking apart as massive explosions spread across the surface. The Varkal Empire's bombardment had begun. Captain Elias Kane sat beside the small alien girl while the rest of the human soldiers struggled to stabilize the flight systems. Alarms screamed inside the shuttle, warning lights flashed everywhere. The ship was barely holding together. One pilot shouted from the front, "We lost half the engines. We're not clearing orbit." Another soldier checked the scanners. "The planet is collapsing. We have less than 5 minutes before total core failure." The girl stared silently through the window. Her glowing blue eyes reflected the burning world below. She did not speak, she only watched, like she was waiting for something to end. Elias noticed her silence immediately. "What are you thinking?" He asked softly. The girl hesitated before answering. "If I stay, everything dies." Elias immediately shook his head. That's not true, but she didn't look convinced. Outside the shuttle, hundreds of alien warships filled the sky. The Varkal fleet surrounded the planet like a metal cage. Massive cannons charged across their hulls. Then a new transmission entered the shuttle system. The same cold voice from before. "Humans," it began. "You have removed Imperial property. Return Subject 0 immediately, or Earth will be erased next." The soldiers inside the shuttle went silent. Even the engines seemed louder now. One nervous soldier looked at Elias. "Captain, if Earth gets attacked..." He didn't finish the sentence. Everyone already understood. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about extinction. The little girl slowly looked down at her hands. "I am problem," she whispered. "No," Elias answered immediately. "You are not a problem." But the girl shook her head slightly. "They come because of me. Humans die because of me." The shuttle suddenly jolted as another explosion rocked the planet below. A massive shockwave hit the atmosphere. The ship tilted dangerously. The pilot shouted again, "We're losing control." Emergency systems failed one by one. The shuttle began spiraling toward open space. Inside, panic started spreading among the soldiers. "We're going down. Brace for impact." But Elias stayed focused on the girl. He could see it clearly now. She was not afraid of dying. She was afraid of existing. Like she believed her life itself was a mistake. Elias grabbed her shoulders gently. "Look at me," he said firmly. The girl slowly raised her eyes. "You think you are the reason everything is happening," he said. "But you are not the reason. War is the reason. Fear is the reason, not you." For a moment she didn't respond. The shuttle continued shaking violently around them. Warning sirens echoed nonstop. Then suddenly a deep explosion echoed through space itself. The Varkal fleet had fired a planet-breaking weapon. A massive beam of energy struck Zereth 9 directly. The planet's core began to crack open like glass. The soldiers watched in horror as entire continents vanished in seconds. One whispered, "It's over." The little girl stared at the destruction silently, then something inside her changed. Her glowing eyes dimmed slightly, and she spoke quietly. "I don't want to be weapon." The shuttle suddenly stabilized for a brief moment. Like space itself had become still. Elias noticed it immediately. "Then don't be," he said softly, but before she could respond, the shuttle's sensors exploded with warnings. Unknown object detected. Multiple interceptors locking on. The Varkal fleet had targeted them. Dozens of missiles launched toward the escaping shuttle. The pilot shouted, "They've locked onto us. We can't outrun them." The soldiers grabbed their seats tightly as alarms screamed louder. Elias pulled the girl closer. "Stay with me," he said. The missiles closed in fast, seconds from impact. Then suddenly the girl looked up and whispered one word. "Stop." Everything froze again. Not just the shuttle, but the missiles outside. All of them stopped mid-space like time itself had been paused. The soldiers inside looked around in shock. What is happening? Elias looked outside the window. Dozens of missiles hung motionless in space like dead stars. The entire battlefield had gone silent. Only the girl was still moving. She stood up slowly from her seat and walked toward the front window of the shuttle. Her small hand touched the glass gently, then she whispered again, "I didn't want this." At that exact moment, all the frozen missiles outside turned to dust, disintegrating silently into space. No explosion, no sound, just nothing. The Varkal fleet's entire vanished instantly. The soldiers stared at her in complete disbelief. One whispered, "She didn't destroy them. She erased them." The girl slowly stepped back from the window. Confused by her own power again, Elias stood beside her. And for the first time, he realized the truth. She wasn't just controlling energy. She was controlling reality itself in moments of extreme emotion. That was why everyone feared her, not because she was evil, but because she didn't understand her own power. The shuttle finally broke free of the collapsing system. Behind them, Zereth 9 exploded into fragments of light. A silent grave floating in space. The soldiers remained quiet for a long time. No one spoke. Because everything they thought they knew about the galaxy had changed. After a while, the girl finally spoke again. Softly, "What now?" Elias looked at the endless stars ahead, then answered, "Now we go home." The girl looked confused. "Home?" Elias nodded. "Yes, for the first time. You will have one." The shuttle drifted through silent space after escaping the destroyed system. Behind it, Zereth 9 was no longer a planet. Only floating fragments of burning rock remained, slowly fading into darkness inside the damaged shuttle. Everyone sat in exhausted silence. The engines hummed weakly, barely keeping them alive. Captain Elias Kane stayed beside the small alien girl. She was quiet, staring at her own hands like she still didn't understand what she had done. No one spoke at first, not because there was nothing to say, but because no one knew where to begin. Then the communication system suddenly activated again. But this time it was not Varkal, it was Earth Military Command. A familiar cold voice filled the shuttle. "Captain Kane," Admiral Reyes said, "we have received full battlefield data." Silence followed for a moment, then she continued, You destroyed a Varkal invasion fleet. The soldiers looked at each other in shock. Even Elias frowned slightly. We didn't destroy them, he replied. There was a pause on the other end. Then the Admiral spoke again. Then explain what we are seeing. A holographic display activated inside the shuttle, showing the moment when the missiles disappeared, and the entire fleet losing contact at the same time. The Admiral's voice turned colder. This is beyond classified threat level. The child must be contained immediately. She is not a civilian. She is a planetary-class anomaly. The little girl flinched when she heard that word again. Anomaly, not name, not person, just problem. Elias immediately stood up. She saved us, he said firmly. She saved humanity's ships from destruction. Admiral Reyes answered instantly. And what happens when she cannot control herself? Do you think Earth will survive if she panics? The shuttle went silent again. The soldiers avoided eye contact. Because the question was not wrong. It was just terrifying, the Admiral continued. Return Subject 0 to Lunar Containment Facility, or you will be charged with treason. The communication ended. The screen went dark. For a long moment, no one moved. Then one soldier finally spoke quietly. So, what now, Captain? Elias looked at the girl beside him. She was staring at the floor, trying to make herself smaller, like she believed she could disappear if she tried hard enough. Elias crouched down beside her. You heard them? He asked gently. She nodded without looking up. They don't want me, she whispered. Elias shook his head. That's not true, but she still didn't believe him. They are scared, she said. Everyone's scared of me. Elias stayed quiet for a moment. Because for the first time, he couldn't easily argue. Not because she was wrong, but because the galaxy had already proven her point too many times. Then suddenly the shuttle's radar picked up something unusual. A small Earth transport fleet was approaching fast, not military, not Varkal. Human ships, but not friendly ones. Weapons were charged. Communication lines opened immediately. A human officer appeared on screen. This is Fleet Security Division, he said. We are authorized to retrieve Subject 0. The soldiers inside the shuttle immediately tensed. The girl looked up slowly, confused again. Elias stepped forward. Stand down, he ordered. The officer shook his head. Captain Kane, you are ordered to surrender immediately. By authority of Earth Defense Council. Behind him. More ships appeared in formation, surrounding the shuttle slowly. The girl quietly moved closer to Elias again, like she already knew what was going to happen next. Elias looked at the fleet outside, then at the frightened child beside him. And for the first time, his decision was clear. No, he said into the comms. I will not surrender her. The officer's expression hardened. Then you leave us no choice. Weapons on the surrounding ships began charging. The soldiers inside the shuttle raised their rifles again. But Elias raised his hand to stop them. No one fires, he ordered. The child looked up at him again. Why you protect me? She asked softly. Elias paused, then answered honestly. Because you are not what they say you are. The girl stayed silent for a moment, then slowly reached for his hand again. Just like before, but this time, there was no fear in her eyes. Only confusion mixed with hope. Then the Earth Fleet commander gave one final warning. Last chance, Captain Kane. Elias looked at the stars ahead, then spoke calmly. She is not a weapon. She is my daughter. The shuttle went completely silent after that. Even the soldiers didn't move. The girl slowly turned toward him. Her glowing blue eyes widened slightly, like she didn't fully understand the word. But she felt it, for the first time in her life. She felt like she belonged to something. Then suddenly the fleet outside hesitated. Their weapons slowly powering down, confused signals filled the comms. Because nobody expected that answer, not from a soldier, not from a captain, and definitely not from a man defying Earth itself. The commander's voice returned, quieter this time. Captain, You are making a very dangerous choice. Elias didn't look away from the girl. I already made it, he replied. The girl gently leaned her head against his arm, like she was learning what safety felt like for the first time. And as the ships slowly lowered their weapons outside, the galaxy finally understood something new. The most dangerous being in existence was not the child. It was the moment someone finally chose to love her instead of fear her.